Have you ever wondered why some women, seemingly calm and collected, suddenly reach a breaking point after 40? What lies beneath the surface of a life that looks complete on the outside, yet feels like a storm brewing within? There is a silent tension that grows over time, a pressure that the world barely notices, but it shapes every thought, every decision, every interaction. By the time a woman reaches this stage of life, she has carried expectations for decades. Expectations from society, from family, from herself. She has been told who she should be, what she should achieve, and how she should appear. Success, beauty, love, and stability are measured in standards that rarely reflect her true self. And when she begins to feel that the time to fulfill these dreams is slipping away, that tension becomes unbearable. The truth is, turning 40 is not just a number. It is a threshold of reflection, a mirror held up to a life of compromises and unspoken desires. For years she has poured herself into roles, daughter, wife, mother, professional, sacrificing personal aspirations for the sake of others. And in this sacrifice, a quiet dissatisfaction builds, often unnoticed even by her. Science shows that the human brain begins reevaluating life priorities around this age. Midlife triggers a search for meaning, a need to reclaim control over time, energy, and purpose. It is not weakness that drives this turmoil. It is a deep, biological and psychological urge to reconcile life's promises with life's reality. This is why the internal storm is so intense. The mind begins to weigh every decision, every opportunity missed, every path not taken, and the emotional pressure mounts silently. This pressure often manifests in ways that seem irrational to outsiders. There is a disconnect between how the world perceives her and how she experiences herself. Friends see stability, family sees routine, colleagues see competence, yet inside she feels invisible. Recognition for her sacrifices is rare. Validation for her struggles is often withheld. This lack of acknowledgement chips away at emotional resilience. Studies in psychology have repeatedly shown that when emotional needs remain unmet for long periods, frustration and resentment quietly grow. They accumulate until even the smallest triggers can ignite disproportionate responses. It is not cruelty, but a desperate call for recognition, a signal that the inner world has been neglected for far too long. And yet, this period is not just about frustration. It is also about potential. It is a time when reflection can lead to awakening. The same mind that feels pressure is capable of extraordinary clarity. The tension she experiences can become fuel. Fuel to pursue dreams previously postponed, to seek joy and fulfillment in ways she never allowed herself before. This is why understanding this stage is so crucial. Families, partners, and friends often misinterpret actions as rebellion or instability, but they are oft and manifestations of a deep, universal desire to be seen, to matter, to reclaim life's vitality. Recognizing this truth changes everything. It transforms perception from judgment to empathy, from confusion to understanding, and from fear to proactive connection. By the end of this journey, viewers will grasp the invisible forces shaping choices, the quiet storms behind decisions that seem sudden, and the emotional dynamics that can either tear apart or heal relationships. Understanding the hidden pressures of midlife is the first step toward preventing unnecessary pain, fostering empathy, and channeling energy into transformation rather than destruction. When you truly see what drives a woman over 40, when you comprehend the magnitude of unmet needs, sacrificed dreams, and the deep hunger for recognition, you begin to understand the patterns that ripple through families, relationships, and communities. You begin to see the path from silent frustration to conscious action. A path, it can create fulfillment rather than chaos, connection rather than conflict. Every word, every thought, every longing that has been buried for years begins to demand attention at this age. It is both terrifying and beautiful. It is a reminder that life is not over at 40. It is entering a phase where truth can no longer be ignored, where the soul insists on expression, and where the choices made today determine whether this storm destroys or transforms. And if you can understand these hidden pressures, if you can feel the weight of the internal storm and yet recognize its potential, you gain insight into human behavior, family dynamics, and the psychology of transformation. You gain the ability to approach life, relationships, and yourself with clarity, empathy, and power. This understanding is the key to navigating midlife without regret, to embracing change without fear, and to creating a life that honors both personal desire and shared responsibility. Beneath the surface of ever. Why woman over 40? There exists an emotional landscape that is both fragile and fiercely alive. It is shaped by years of sacrifice, unmet expectations, and the constant balancing of roles. Every day, she navigates the demands of family, career, and social obligations, often placing her own needs at the bottom of the list. Yet the human psyche does not ignore its own hunger forever. Emotions, suppressed for decades, demand recognition, and the absence of fulfillment begins to create invisible cracks in even the strongest bonds. Research in psychology consistently shows that when emotional needs, love, validation, autonomy, and respect are chronically neglected, the mind starts to push in unexpected ways. Resentment quietly builds. Anxiety simmers beneath the surface. Small irritations become magnified, and the threshold for patience shrinks. It is not a flaw, it is a human response to neglect. Every interaction she has with the world is filtered through this emotional lens. The love she gives is often conditional upon the recognition she receives. Yet the recognition rarely arrives in the depth her soul requires. This imbalance triggers a cycle of frustration, where the more she gives without acknowledgement, the more her internal tension grows. Neuroscience reveals that prolonged stress alters how the brain processes emotional stimuli. The amygdala, responsible for fear and anger, becomes more reactive, while the prefrontal cortex, which governs reasoning and impulse control, can weaken under chronic pressure. This explains why women who appear composed one moment can react with intense emotion the next. It is not volatility, it is biology responding to unhealed emotional wounds. The pressure is compounded by the social invisibility that often accompanies this stage of life. Society celebrates youth and novelty, yet it rarely honors the complexity, wisdom, and depth that come with experience. A woman who reaches 40 may find that attention, admiration, or validate ion that was once abundant is now scarce. This lack of acknowledgement does not diminish her value, but it heightens the internal voice asking, "Am I enough? Do I matter?" When this question persists unanswered, the mind seeks compensation. She may pursue new experiences, assertiveness, or even rebellion, not out of cruelty but as a natural response to the deprivation of recognition. Understanding this pattern shifts perception. What seems irrational to others is, in fact, a deeply human demand for respect, for emotional connection, and for authenticity. Hormonal changes also play a pivotal role in shaping emotional intensity during this stage. Estrogen and progesterone fluctuations can impact mood regulation, stress response, and cognitive function. Combined with the psychological weight of unmet goals, these changes can amplify sensitivity, making frustrations feel more acute and victories feel more fleeting. The mind becomes hyper-aware of loss, opportunity, and limitation. This heightened awareness, if unchecked, can manifest as tension in relationships, impatience with routine, or even a desire to escape the very structures that have defined her life. Yet, embedded within this intensity is also extraordinary potential. Heightened emotional sensitivity can fuel insight, creativity, and transformation. The very forces that threaten to destabilize can also be harnessed to create profound personal growth. Every woman carries within her a powerful need to be understood. It is a need that transcends superficial interactions, that demands recognition of her struggles, her wisdom, and her desires. When unmet, it can shape behavior in ways that ripple through families, subtly altering dynamics and quietly testing loyalties. Psychology teaches that humans are wired for emotional reciprocity. When one's needs are ignored, behavior often shifts to elicit response, sometimes consciously, often unconsciously. This is why patterns of conflict, tension, or sudden assertiveness arise. They are signals, not failures. They are calls to attention, to acknowledgement, to recalibration. The reward for understanding this dynamic is immense. Recognizing the interplay of unmet needs, emotional pressure, and physiological change allows us to approach relationships with clarity, empathy, and strategy. It transforms perceived chaos into insight, frustration into opportunity for connection, and disruption into a chance for healing. When emotional needs are seen and honored, the tension that once threatened to break bonds can instead fuel renewal, deeper intimacy, and mutual respect. The mind, once burdened by unspoken grievances, begins to release its storm, creating space for joy, purpose, and collaboration. Awareness of these emotional forces does more than prevent conflict. It empowers transformation. It allows women to reclaim their own power without destroying what they hold dear. It equips partners, families, and communities to respond with understanding rather than reaction. It transforms the midlife years from a period of silent pressure into a time of deliberate growth. Every feeling, every unspoken longing, every heightened response can be recognized not as a problem, but as a signal, a call to action, reflection, and authentic connection. When these dynamics are understood, the invisible cracks no longer threaten collapse. They become gateways to profound insight, emotional mastery, and lasting transformation. The need for self-discovery grows stronger with every passing year, and it is a force that cannot be ignored. After decades of prioritizing responsibilities, many women over 40 begin to feel a pull toward themselves, a call to reclaim identity, purpose, and freedom. It is not a fleeting desire or a superficial whim. It is a deep psychological drive, rooted in the fundamental human need for autonomy. Research in self-determination theory shows that when individuals lack control over their own lives, frustration, dissatisfaction, and emotional tension intensify. This drive for independence often emerges with clarity around midlife, pushing women to evaluate what they have sacrificed, what they have gained, and what remains unfulfilled. It is the mind demanding alignment between inner values and outer reality. This inner pull manifests in subtle ways at first. Thoughts linger on dreams postponed, ambitions abandoned, or passions left unexplored. There is a growing awareness that time is finite and that life cannot be paused indefinitely. Every day carries the weight of opportunities that might never return. Psychological studies reveal that this awareness of mortality, even at 40, heightens motivation and sharpens focus on what truly matters. For some, this leads to a desire to invest energy in personal growth, to pursue hobbies, learn new skills, or nurture connections that have been neglected. For others, it creates tension in relationships, as the old dynamics no longer satisfy the evolving emotional lands. The pursuit of autonomy can be intense because it taps into both fear and hope. Fear of unfulfilled potential, fear of being invisible, fear of regret, all of these converge to create urgency. At the same time, hope emerges as a powerful motivator. Hope that life can still be reshaped, that joy can still be discovered, that personal identity can be reclaimed. Neuroscience supports this tension, showing that the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and decision-making, becomes more active when the brain recognizes both risk and opportunity. This duality drives decisive action, compelling women to assert themselves in ways that may feel unfamiliar to those around them. It is not rebellion for the sake of chaos. It is the mind and soul demanding recognition, alignment, and fulfillment. Many women over 40 experience this drive as a profound need for self-expression. After years of conforming to societal expectations, the desire to express individuality becomes overwhelming. It may surface through career changes, artistic endeavors, travel, or redefining relationships. Psychological research indicates that self-expression and creativity are directly linked to increased life satisfaction, resilience, and emotional stability. When expression is denied, frustration builds, often erupting in behaviors that challenge existing family structures or social norms. This is not inherently destructive. It is the natural assertion of a self that has been dormant, demanding acknowledgement. Understanding this shifts perspective. What may seem disruptive is actually a step toward authenticity, a manifestation of psychological truth that cannot be silenced. The ripple effect of this transformation is powerful. As women pursue autonomy and self-rediscovery, those around them are inevitably affected. Family dynamics shift, routines are challenged, and old patterns are disrupted. Yet this disruption is an opportunity, not a threat. It can awaken others to the importance of EVY, empathy, communication, and emotional intelligence. Relationships that survive and thrive during this period are those that recognize the legitimacy of the drive for selfhood and respond with understanding, support, and respect. Studies in relational psychology emphasize that when individual needs are honored within a relationship, intimacy deepens, conflict diminishes, and shared growth accelerates. The pursuit of autonomy becomes a catalyst for stronger, more resilient connections rather than a source of destruction. Every woman carries within her the potential to transform this phase of life into one of empowerment, clarity, and fulfillment. The same energy that could lead to tension or rebellion can be harnessed for profound growth. Awareness of internal drives, combined with deliberate action, allows the midlife years to become a period of reinvention rather than regret. By understanding the psychological mechanisms behind this pursuit of freedom, both women and those around them can navigate change with intention rather than reaction. The energy that fuels the desire for autonomy can be a force of creation, not destruction, a pathway to personal liberation and relational harmony. Recognizing the psychological need for self-rediscovery reveals a simple truth. When women are seen, heard, and allowed to pursue their authentic selves, the chaos that once seemed inevitable transforms into opportunity. Every act of assertiveness, every pursuit of passion, every claim of personal space is a signal of life force, vitality, and growth. This period is not a threat, it is an awakening. The drive to reclaim identity is not a sign of failure or instability. It is a testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience, transformation, and renewed purpose. Understanding, embracing, and supporting this journey is the key to turning tension into triumph, disruption into progress, and inner drive into a force for positive, lasting change. As this drive for self-rediscovery intensifies, its impact extends beyond the individual and reaches every corner of the family and social environment. The energy of a woman claiming her autonomy is magnetic, powerful, and sometimes unsettling. It challenges routines, questions traditions, and redefines boundaries. Psychology teaches that humans unconsciously mirror and react to the emotional states of those around them. When one member of a family undergoes intense internal transformation, it creates ripples, subtle shifts that can either strengthen connections or amplify tensions. The awakening of self within a woman over 40 is rarely isolated. It interacts dynamically with partners, children, and even extended family, compelling everyone to confront their own complacency, habits, and unresolved patterns. This is why the midlife years are often a period of profound transformation, not just for the individual, but for the entire relational ecosystem surrounding her. Key barrier. The ripple effect often manifests as friction, bika. Use change is inherently uncomfortable. Those who have grown accustomed to certain dynamics may resist the adjustments demanded by someone stepping into their authentic self. Psychologists describe this as the tension between homeostasis and growth. Families tend to stabilize around familiar patterns, even when those patterns are unhealthy or restrictive. The introduction of self-assertion, ambition, or new priorities disrupts the equilibrium. For a woman claiming her independence, this is not about defiance, it is about asserting needs that were previously suppressed. Her actions may appear dramatic or unpredictable to outsiders, but they are rooted in fundamental, psychological principles. The mind seeking congruence between inner desires and outer reality, the heart demanding fulfillment, and the soul insisting on recognition. Kibro. This period also exposes vulnerabilities that were long hidden. Emotional sensitivity, once kept under control, surfaces in ways that are difficult to ignore. Every unmet expectation, every suppressed desire, every ignored longing is amplified. Neuroscience demonstrates that prolonged emotional neglect can heighten reactivity and lower thresholds for frustration. The brain, craving acknowledgement and connection, sends signals through behavior, tone, and intensity that cannot be silenced. This explains why seemingly minor triggers, an offhand comment, a misaligned routine, a perceived lack of support, can elicit strong responses. These reactions are not arbitrary, They are messages demanding attention, empathy, and validation. Understanding this transforms perception. What appears as chaos is actually communication, a deeply human form of expressing unmet needs and asserting existence. The way these ripples are handled determines whether relationships fracture or evolve. Emotional intelligence becomes the decisive factor. When partners and families recognize the legitimacy of her needs and respond with empathy and respect, tension becomes OPP. Opportunity. Conflict can shift into dialogue, frustration into understanding, and disruption into growth. Studies in relational psychology consistently show that honoring autonomy within a relationship strengthens bonds, increases trust, and deepens intimacy. Conversely, dismissing or resisting these changes often exacerbates tension, leading to cycles of miscommunication, resentment, and emotional withdrawal. The difference between destruction and transformation lies in awareness, understanding, and deliberate choice. Every family has the potential to harness this energy positively. The awakening of self within a woman over 40 is a natural, even necessary evolution. It signals not weakness, but strength, not instability, but courage. It is an assertion of life, purpose, and authenticity. By responding consciously, families can align with her growth rather than resist it. Emotional tension, once understood, can become a teacher, revealing unmet needs, hidden patterns, and opportunity. IES for collective growth. Relationships that embrace this process emerge stronger, more resilient, and deeply connected. At its core, this transformation challenges everyone to examine their own lives. It forces reflection. How much are we honoring our own needs, pursuing our own purpose, and fostering genuine connection? When we witness this energy, it is not only a call to empathy, but a mirror, inviting us to evaluate whether we too have been complacent, suppressing desires, or neglecting emotional realities. The midlife awakening is not a threat. It is a catalyst for universal growth. By understanding the psychological forces at play, we gain insight into human behavior, relational dynamics, and the power of authentic expression. The woman stepping into her full self is a force of nature, intense, uncompromising, and transformative. Her drive is a reflection of the human spirit demanding alignment, meaning, and vitality. When recognized and supported, it creates harmony, connectio. And an inspiration. When ignored or resisted, it can generate chaos. Awareness, empathy, and deliberate response are the keys to channeling this energy toward growth rather than conflict. The transformation she embodies is both a personal and relational opportunity, a chance to redefine what it means to live fully, authentically, and courageously. It is a reminder that change, even when disruptive, holds the potential to awaken, inspire, and elevate every life it touches. The awakening of self in a woman over 40 is not merely a personal journey, it is a profound force that reshapes the very fabric of her relationships. Every choice, every assertion of autonomy, every act of self-expression sends waves that demand acknowledgement. It is a powerful psychological truth that humans are wired to respond to authenticity. When someone steps fully into their truth, the energy is palpable, unavoidable, and transformative. It compels attention, challenges complacency, and tests the limits of ease. Distinct dynamics. This is why families often feel disrupted during this phase. It is not because the woman seeks to harm or destabilize. It is because her evolution exposes the areas where others have remained stagnant, unresolved, or disconnected from their own emotional realities. The tension that emerges is a mirror, reflecting the unspoken needs and suppressed desires of everyone involved. Partners may feel threatened not by intention, but by the intensity of change. Children may sense shifts in attention or energy and respond with confusion or resistance. Friends and extended family may struggle to reconcile the familiar with the newly emerging self. Psychological research shows that humans unconsciously resist changes in relational patterns that challenge their comfort zones. Yet, resistance does not diminish the necessity of growth. It simply signals that transformation is underway. The deeper the emotional and psychological currents beneath the surface, the stronger the reactio. NS will appear. This is the nature of human systems. Energy cannot be contained indefinitely. When one member rises in authenticity, the environment is forced to adjust. Understanding this dynamic is crucial. Emotional intelligence becomes the bridge between disruption and opportunity. Recognizing that reactions, whether frustration, anger, or confusion, are responses to a larger process allows families to respond consciously rather than react impulsively. It shifts perception from judgment to insight, from conflict to dialogue. The woman asserting her autonomy is not breaking bonds arbitrarily. She is highlighting areas where emotional needs have been unmet, where recognition has been absent, and where personal fulfillment has been delayed. This is why midlife tension often feels disproportionate. It carries the weight of decades of suppressed desire and deferred acknowledgement. It is both a challenge and an invitation to see, to hear, and to honor. This period also illuminates the extraordinary capacity for growth when energy is channeled consciously. The same intensity that can fracture relationships can also create profound connection. Neuroscience demonstrates that when emotional needs are validated and autonomy is respected, oxytocin levels increase, stress decreases, and relational bonds strengthen. The human brain thrives on reciprocity and acknowledgement. When a woman's authentic self is recognized and supported, the tension that once threatened to destabilize becomes a catalyst for trust, intimacy, and mutual respect. Families that navigate this process successfully do not simply survive, they evolve. They deepen in understanding, resilience, and emotional sophistication. The psychological mechanisms driving these transformations are universal. Every individual carries a need for validation, autonomy, and meaningful connection. When one person begins to pursue these needs with clarity and intensity, it exposes the latent forces at play in the environment around them. The disruption is a signal, a wake-up call that emotional and relational systems must evolve. For the woman over 40, this is not a time for compromise at the expense of self. It is a moment to assert identity, honor desires, and embrace the fullness of experience. The key is not resistance, but awareness, recognizing the patterns, responding with empathy, and channeling energy toward constructive transformation rather than defensive reaction. Every ripple of tension carries a hidden reward. It is an opportunity to identify where emotional needs have been neglected, where communication has faltered, and where relationships have relied on convenience rather than conscious connection. By embracing this insight, families and individuals gain the power to transform conflict into collaboration, frustration into understanding, and disruption into growth. This is why the midlife awakening is both feared and revered. It is intense because it is honest, uncompromising, and unavoidable. It is transformative because it forces clarity, alignment, and deep reflection. The energy that drives a woman to reclaim herself after 40 is the same energy that can strengthen families, redefine partnerships, and elevate communities. When met with empathy, respect, and conscious engagement, it becomes a force of creation rather than destruction. It teaches the value of authenticity, the necessity of emotional literacy, and the power of deliberate choice. Understanding this dynamic provides not only insight into human behavior, but also a roadmap for navigating relationships with intelligence and compassion. The midlife awakening is not chaos, it is evolution. It is an invitation to witness the full capacity of the human spirit, to rise with courage, claim purpose, and transform tension into profound opportunity. At the heart of this transformation lies a profound truth. Every action, every emotional surge, and every assertion of independence is a reflection of unmet needs. Demanding recognition. When a woman over 40 steps into her power, she is not merely reacting. She is reclaiming the energy, identity, and purpose that have been deferred for years. This reclamation is both necessary and inevitable. Psychology teaches that suppressed emotions do not vanish. They accumulate, intensify, and seek release. The longer they are ignored, the more forcefully they emerge. This explains why patterns of tension or conflict often appear sudden to those around her. They are not random eruptions, but the natural consequence of decades of emotional suppression, converging with a deep, biological, and psychological drive for fulfillment. Every interaction becomes a reflection of this inner force. Partners, children, and even friends are confronted with behaviors that challenge old expectations and routines. The intensity of her presence, once dormant, can feel destabilizing because it exposes the limitations, insecurities, and avoidance present in others. This is the fundamental principle of human relational psychology. Change in one individual triggers shifts across the entire system. The energy she projects acts as a mirror, revealing gaps in empathy, communication, and emotional alignment. Those who resist or misinterpret her growth amplify tension, while those who respond with understanding transform potential conflict